My dear family, Sunday's gospel, we read how Jesus fed the crowds. He saw the crowds and he saw that the crowds were hungry. So the gospel tells us that he decided to perform the miracle of the multiplication of the bread, feeding more than 5,000 men, not counting their wives and children, and they still had tons of leftovers. The bread was abundant. No one went hungry. In today's gospel, we hear how Jesus and his disciples somehow disappear from that sight. They disappear from that scene. So the crowds start looking for them. They start looking for him. When the crowds find him in Capernaum, Jesus tells them that he did not only come to feed them with the food from this world, that he came to feed them from the food that is from above. So Jesus proceeds to explain to the crowds what that means and how they can come to have that food. He gives what is commonly known in the theology world, the bread of life discourse. Or in other words, he explains what this means in the bread of life sermon, or in the bread of life homily. He gives a homily on what the bread of life is. Jesus tells them that he came to give them bread, and that bread will give them eternal life. He tells the crowds to stop looking for food from this world only. He says that the food from this world will perish, and that they should not find that in itself to be the end. He asks that should be the beginning of their search. The food from this earth, he tells them, should only point towards the food from above, the food from heaven, the bread of life that gives eternal life. In last Sunday's gospel, Christ knew that the crowds needed bread from this world to eat. Christ knew that they were hungry, so he feeds them. He gives them food from this world. But Jesus did not stop there. When the crowds came to find him for more, now he tells them that because they're now satisfied, they're looking for him. But that what he gives is not only the food from this world. What he gives is food that gives eternal life. Christ, my dear family, calls us to feed the hungry. He also calls us to give drink to the thirsty. He calls us to clothe the naked, to shelter the homeless, to visit the sick, to visit the imprisoned, and to bury the dead. We call those the corporal works of mercy. However, if we only stop there, if we only stop at performing or promoting good social justice, we bring nothing new to the table. The world already offers that. Sometimes they may offer it better than we do. What we Catholics bring to the table is something new. What Christ brings to the table is something unique. It is not just social justice, but it is a type of social justice that points towards something else than itself. It points towards eternal justice. Corporal works of mercy always should point to spiritual works of mercy. Corporal works of mercy should not be an end of itself. It should not be the only thing. For the believer, for the Christian, for the Catholic, things from this world should only point to things from the world to come. The same is true for the bread that fed the crowds in last Sunday's gospel. Jesus satisfies their corporeal needs so that they will be more open to their spiritual needs. And now he points them to those needs. He points them to the bread of life. The bread that will allow them to never experience hunger again. The drink that will never allow them to experience thirst again. Jesus tells the crowds that this type of bread is unique. Not only that, but this type of bread is Him. He tells the crowds that this bread is eternal, so they will never run out. It's bread in abundance. So the crowds tell Him, well, give us that bread. We want that bread. And my dear family, for us today, for us who are Catholic, we know who that bread is. But for someone who has never read this gospel, for someone who has never read this passage in the Gospel of John, Jesus will explain exactly what that means next Sunday. Next Sunday's gospel is a continuation of the Bread of Life homily. Yes, homilies back then took days, not just minutes. If there were any doubts in the crowds of who this Bread of Life is, next Sunday gospel explains in detail what He means by who the Bread of Life is. For us, we know that is Jesus Christ. My dear family, what are we searching for in life? Do we search for things in this world only? Are we searching for the things that perish? Are we allowing the things from this world to point us to the things from the world to come? I think I have a pretty good guess. You are here today early in the morning for a 7 a.m. Mass. You are searching for things of the world to come. That gives me hope that you are in search for the things that are not only from this world, but from the world to come. Let us then preach this gospel, preach this message that social justice in this world should not be an end on itself. The world already does that. We bring something new to the table. Social justice should point to eternal justice, should point to spiritual works of mercy, should point towards the bread that will never allow them to go hungry again.